that does lead us on to the sort of main event, the drama.
Yep, the drama.
The main event of today's video, James. And the main reason that I've got you on here as well is because I do need this one to be explained a little bit to me. I had someone in my comments the other week going, what was it about? It was about the FMC drama. And they were like, why did you make this video? And I was like, because I don't understand what's going on and I wanted to understand it. So here we are. This is the medium I've chosen to help myself understand it. And this is what we're doing today. Lucas O'Connell, first of all, great WCA profile picture. Love that.
I was so surprised that got approved. When he submitted that, he was asking me, he's like, is this going to get approved? I'm like, no chance. And then it did. So what do I know?
But here we are. So Lucas O'Connell, for anyone who needs just a little bit of background about what we're talking about today, he has switched. He's on the Supreme team. He's one of my sponsor cubers. He has switched from being a New Zealand cuber to being an Italian cuber. The reason he's done that is, James, he never should have been a New Zealand cuber technically, right?
Yeah. So back, I guess, before like 1 or 2 years ago, we didn't check citizenships at people's first competitions, which is, I mean, you're technically supposed to, but lots of countries around the world didn't and still don't, to be honest. Just because for a lot of young competitors, they don't easily have like a driver's license. It's like a hassle to bring a passport or whatever. And most people are the citizenship that they say they are. And I guess Lucas lived in New Zealand for most of his life, and he went to a New Zealand high school, and probably most of his mates were Kiwis, I'd imagine. So yeah, at his first competition, he said, I'm a New Zealander. No one ever questioned it. And so he was competing for New Zealand all these years, but he shouldn't have been because, never had citizenship, apparently.
Right. I'm just realizing something, actually, that I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I might not be a New Zealand competitor either.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't have a passport. I'm not a citizen, but I'm a permanent resident.
Yeah.
Is that enough? I'm eligible for a passport, but I physically don't have one.
Yeah, no, I believe you've got to be a citizen. I'm not 100% sure on that. You'd want to talk to your local delegates about that, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to steal anyone's. I'm not going to be stealing anyone's NRs. But that seems silly, though. I haven't lived in the UK for 13 years. I've got no plans to go back there. I just haven't ticked the button to get my passport yet. But technically, I could be in the wrong there.
Yeah, it is a tricky question, and that gets into some other like deeper issues as well about people who live in a country different than the one they represent in the WCA. It means that they're almost ineligible for like titles and championships and that sort of thing because they can't easily travel to the country where their like local championship is held, and they're not eligible to get on the podium at the championships they can attend. For example, I know Max Xiong's an example of this. He's like a really fast big cuber from China, but he lives in Canada full time. And so he can't just easily pop over to China champs or anything, or Asian champs. But he also, even if he was first at North American champs, he's not going to get the titles. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one there.
Yeah, right. There's lots of real dumb practical things to take into account as well that I've seen mentioned, and I can totally resonate with as I guess a parent. And I've been to a lot of cube competitions, and I've dealt with a lot of kids losing really quite expensive cubes.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name names, but there is one person in Christchurch who's lost 2 GAN 14s. They lost a 4,
Really?
Or was it a 13? I think it was the 13, but they lost one, bought another one, and then lost that one as well. And I'm not going to name them. They know who they are. The thought of giving my kids their passports fills me with absolute horror.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring like a photocopy or like a photocopy of a birth certificate or something like that. There are options, but It is a bit of a...
Yeah. I've never checked... Actually, I've checked a few people in at competitions. I've never asked to see their passport. I've just said, and you're representing this country, which is potentially technically wrong.
Yeah, and it's something I think we've cracked down a little bit on it in the last year or so recently, particularly since Cameron's similar situation to what happened with Lucas. Cameron Chin.
Right.
He was representing New Zealand, but shouldn't have been, and had a very similar thing happen to Lucas, where it was sort of found out and they switched him to Malaysia, and he retroactively got some records there.
Well, on that point, what has you might want to bring up Lucas's page. Someone in the chat, Alex, saying, I don't like how this basically messes with a lot of past records, and I feel like it should be a regular nationality change rather than rewriting history so much. Because I remember talking to Chris Mills about this when he was talking about switching to New Zealand from the UK. And my understanding was that when you switch, it wipes your old records and you start again. Has that ever been the case, or was that a misunderstanding?
I think that's just a misunderstanding, yeah. Basically, the way that a switch normally works is, obviously Lucas's situation is a bit different, and we'll get into exactly what happened with Lucas, but the way a switch would normally work is you'd have a dual citizen, or at least a dual citizen, who wants to change which country they represent, and they talk to their local delegates, and then at the start of the next calendar year, their citizenship changes on the WCA, or the country they're representing changes. And then, as far as the database is concerned, it's like they're kind of starting fresh, but all the old results are still there. It's just that moving forward, all their new results will go under their new country of representation. So Chris, for example, like you brought up, used to represent the UK up until the start of this year. And so if you go into the UK rankings for like 3x3, for example, all his old times are still in the rankings. And he's actually still the UK NR holder for 3x3 single, just because his 459 hasn't been beaten. So even though he's representing New Zealand now, he still holds at least one UK NR, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that's what would normally happen. And then once he switches, it's only his new times that get put into the New Zealand rankings. So actually, if you go to Chris's profile, it's kind of interesting because you can see he still hasn't gotten a 3-blind mean since he switched.
What a nerd.
Yeah, well, what a nerd. But you can see in the national and continental ranking columns of his profile that his mean is just unranked. There's no ranking there because he hasn't gotten a mean to put in the New Zealand rankings. So there is no ranking given to his mean as far as New Zealand and Oceania are concerned.
Okay. Oh no, Daniel's in the chat. I think I'm going to get cancelled from being New Zealand, everyone. Daniel, I'm technically not a citizen of New Zealand. I'm a permanent resident. Am I allowed to be competing as a New Zealander? Whoops. I was going to create a poll because I've never done one before, and this seemed like a good one. So let's try and do it well, James. So what if we asked what should happen to Lucas's records? Stay as New Zealand or switch? Does that sound like a fair question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there is a right answer.
Oh, I'm going to start the poll and see what happens, just because I've never done one before and I want to do one.
Yeah, no, by all means. Yeah, so I think personally that what's happened is the correct call. It's just weird. It's really odd, but it is probably the right decision. So I guess we haven't explained. Do we want to explain like what's happened exactly with Lucas's with Lucas's switch?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get some context, please.
Yeah. So Lucas, he actually at one point was a triple citizen. He had Argentinian, Canadian, and Italian citizenship.
I had no idea he was so international and exotic.
Oh yeah, his parents, I think they met while traveling the world or something.
Okay.
And he was born in one of those countries, and I think his mum's Argentinian and his dad's Canadian. He was born in Italy, something like that. Anyway,
okay.
I don't know the exact details, but it's something like that. I think now only his Italian citizenship is valid. But basically, yeah, he was never a New Zealand citizen. And so all this time he was essentially competing under New Zealand erroneous, right? He was competing under the wrong flag. And so this isn't like a regular country switch on the WCA because as far as the WCA is concerned, all those old New Zealand results are ineligible, right? They can't stand under the New Zealand rankings. And so with a normal switch, all your old times would stand in the old rankings. But with Lucas's switch, all his results were essentially transplanted from the New Zealand rankings into the Italian rankings, which had a few carry-on effects. First of which is that he actually got an Italian NR immediately, but retroactively.
2x2, right?
Because, yeah, 2x2. That was actually kind of the biggest one because that Italian 2x2 NR single it was a pretty legendary one. It was world record at the time.
Was it?
Yeah, back in 2011, and it was a big world record as well. It was it dropped from 0.96 to 0.69. So it was a huge drop, and it wasn't beaten for years and years and years. And up until today, it actually hasn't been beaten by any Italian. So it was standing as the Italian record up until Lucas switched, and then his 202 single from 2017 beat it.
Wow.
So he retroactively beat it 7 years ago. It's kind of funny.
So sorry, say that again. When did he get his 0.64 2x2 single?
It was at Tech Week New Zealand 2017.
2017.
It was a competition that.
So the world record still would have been a world record and would have stood until 2017.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have stood as world record until 2017. It was beaten before that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, but it would have stood as Italian NR till then.
Yeah, right. Alex Mass in the chat saying 13 years is a hell of a run for an NR. That's fair. That's wild. Yeah. Italy, what are you doing? Practice 2x2.
Yeah, I mean, now, retroactively, it's only been cut down to 6 years. So Lucas has cut the run of the NR in half.
Yeah.
But yeah, so his switch, it meant that he got that NR, but also because he's a really good all-rounder. I mean, that was why you sponsored him. He got, I think, 26 other NRs retroactively. So if you look at his record history, it says 27 NRs.
Records. Yeah, right.
Oh, actually, it might not say that on his profile just yet. I know they've been updating it.
Oh gosh. Okay.
The different pages at different times.
Boomer moment. Let's just go for records. And can we search by one person?
Yeah, if you went into the Italian record page, you could like Control F Lucas. I think that's what Jasper did the other day. On Lucas's profile currently, it just says 15 NRs, but I think they've yet to update everything because a lot of this.
Yeah, right. Here we go. Oh no, I've only got one. Oh, but I'm in. Show history.
Yeah.
And then search Apple F Lucas. Yeah, right. Now I've got 16. Okay, cool. So
16. Okay.
So he's got the 2x2 NR. Mm-hmm. He's got he did have a blindfold NR, and he had so he's lost. That's changed things in New Zealand as well, because he was the NR holder in New Zealand for blindfold for a long time.
This is something that was announced in the KICA Discord, which, if your viewers don't know, is just the main New Zealand Discord server. But yeah, there are a bunch of NRs retroactively gotten by Kiwis because they were NRs that Lucas held at the time, but according to the WCA, now he didn't. And so, so there's a bunch of new but old Kiwi NRs. It's a weird situation.
It's super weird. I mean... Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I do feel for anyone who's been affected by it in Italy.
Yeah. So I think it's the right call because, you need your rankings to be accurate, and you can't have someone's results standing just because like they weren't caught at the time or whatever the case might be. But I do feel for any Italian competitors who lost their NRs because of the switch, especially ones where I don't have a way of checking this, not easily anyway, but I'm sure that there would have been some competitors, or I think there's a decent chance anyway, that there would have been some competitors who now never held NRs.
Oh yeah, that hurts.
Yeah. All I can hope is that they don't know about it, that they've stopped cubing now and they'll be none the wiser.
Well, that's it. Half of them will have stopped cubing now. We got 11 votes in the poll. It's currently 55% stay as New Zealand, 45% switch to Italy, and it's been swinging from 50-50 to either way. So from our very limited data set of 12 viewers, we haven't really got a great response, but that's all right. So... Yeah. But currently, it's a majority stay as New Zealand. I kind of feel I hear the point you're making that he's technically never been a New Zealand competitor, and I understand why it's important to be specific about where you're competing, because you could just claim, oh, actually, I'm from, I can't remember what's a country that's just joined the WCA. I don't know. Let's say Scotland was listed as its own set of records, but you had to get them now, and then anyone could just switch. Leo could switch to Scotland, or Royan could switch to Scotland, which would be pretty funny. But they don't want that happening, and I get that. But I'm not sure the passport system is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think the WCA runs into a lot of like practicality issues, where it's like we want to maintain the integrity of the database, we want to be taken seriously and all that, but also we are kind of casual in a lot of ways, and we're like a small niche hobby, and most competitors are children, right? So it's like hard to validate these things. And I think, this is just another one of those situations where like it seems like mean to take away some people's NRs and to like remove his entire record history, or change it anyway. And it's just a question of like what the WCA wants to be, kind of, I think, where it's like, is it this casual thing where it's just like fun, like local comps and stuff, or is it like a serious like sporting body? Because you can imagine if this was like a mainstream sport, then absolutely no way that Lucas's old results stay with New Zealand, right? Because it's just like, if you want to be taken seriously, that wasn't correct. Although if we were a serious sporting body, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. Right?
Yeah, right. We'd have a better system. Alex has brought up a valid point. I feel like it should be a regular nationality change. It's not like it was malicious. Like he wasn't maliciously listed as New Zealand for an advantage or anything. I think that's kind of where I'm sitting. If I was looking at it and knowing that we are essentially a grassroots organization chilling, I would have gone, oh, okay, well, listen, you can't compete for this country anymore.
Yeah. And so that's, like I say, a question of, I guess, what the WCA wants to be. Is it a grassroots organization where we let things like that slide? Or is it like a thing where we're like, no, actually, we want the results to be taken seriously?
This is great because it does link back to that video when I went through the WCA goals document, and I was suggesting, or I was sort of scratching my chin and thinking, I wonder if the WCA needs to be a grassroots organization and a pro sports level organization, like mainstream sports kind of are, some of them, you know. And yeah, I see what you're saying. If they want to be taken seriously, then they have to take things like this, I suppose, seriously. Because if they didn't, then I suppose the body that are going to give them the status as a recognized sport, they might be like, you got to tighten that up.
Yeah, and also just for our own integrity and like for our own like peace of mind or whatever, we want our results to be like accurate and consistent and reliable and all that. And yeah, also I think something that we haven't touched on just yet, but like I think we're thinking of the Switch as like the mean option, right? The mean option is like removing all those results from New Zealand, putting them all in Italy, and that's mean because it takes away like this record history and it potentially takes NRs away from some Italians. But on the flip side of that, there are a bunch of Kiwis now who have records like on their profile who never did before because Lucas was better than them and he was falsely representing New Zealand. An example that comes to mind for me is Mantra Shukla. I don't know if you remember him.
I do remember Mantra. I think I still follow him on Instagram, actually.
Yeah. So Mantra, for years and years, he was like probably the person who took skew most seriously in New Zealand. He never got NRs because Lucas was just cracked and Lucas had NRs, but he was like grinding for it and he was NR2 for a long time. So when Lucas's results were removed, Mantra now retroactively has these NRs, and he never had NR before. And so, like, from that perspective, it's like if you kept Lucas's results in the database, then that would be, or if you kept Lucas's results under New Zealand in the database, then that would be like keeping this NR away from Mantra. That retroactively, that NR should have been Mantra's, right, according to citizenship.
Yeah, right. So
and
I'm
so
not sure if you're
like.
Not sure if you can see my screen just now, but I've got Mantra's stuff up. So yeah, he's got the 450 and the 432 NR averages from 2018 and 2017. So he didn't have those before.
Nope, no, that was just Lucas. Lucas was like half a second clear or something.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, I don't think it's entirely fair to look at it as like there's a mean option and then there's like a serious, or there's like a mean option and then like a generous option. It's like even the option they took, although it might seem mean in some ways, it has also given people NRs that didn't have them before. And in some ways, they should have had them, you know?
In your experience, how uncommon or common is it for things like this to happen? This can't be the first time this has happened.
No, it's pretty rare. It's only happened a few times that I can think of where like someone's erroneously switched or like erroneously been competing under the wrong flag. Just regular nationality changes are relatively common. There's a few people who have even changed like back and forth, which is kind of weird.
That's wacky.
Yeah, it is wacky. But no, switches like this I think are pretty rare, and probably most of the ones that do happen are like with relatively slower cubers. I think Lucas's one is just notable because like he is so fast and has had NRs in a bunch of different events. So it's like he has all these records that are now removed from the New Zealand rankings and put into the Italian rankings. So
yeah, right.
Yeah. Also, something that I found interesting is I was concerned because you know NR's had this New Zealand's had this NR streak, right? With the first like 12 years of competitions, we had an NR every single comp, and I was looking at this and I'm like, damn, is it going to get broken retroactively? Like, are we going to lose all that? And so I went back through all Lucas's old records, and turns out that at almost every comp where he got an NR, I also got Megamix NR.
Great, good news.
And the few that didn't were like covered by some other thing. So yeah, it's just funny that like we just happened to never rely on Lucas for the streak. But yeah, it was a bit touch and go there.
Yeah, that was. I can imagine. I hadn't even considered the NR streak. Is it still going, or did it broke? Didn't it?
It broke at Mind Games 2022 when I failed to get multi-blind NR by 1 cube.
Jesus, James, come on, mate. What are you up to?
To be fair, that was like my debut comp, well, like my re-debut for multi, right? Where I like had grinded it a bunch, and then I decided I was going to compete, and I was planning to get NR first comp back, but turns out that's pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big goal for first comp back. And I did a really bad job of saying what your NR was the other day. Can you remind everyone what your new OCR, sorry, I beg your pardon. Can you remind everyone what your OCR is?
Yeah, so it's 47 cubes out of 50. So 44 points in 59 minutes and 28 seconds, I think. Which is ranked 11th in the world. So,
11th in the world?
That's the one.
Whoo! All right, I think we've covered everything, have we? That's pretty much the Lucas story. Mantra Shukla, I remember him. I've only met him once at the first comp I ever went to, which is where I first saw you as well, at the Southern 2016, the White Elephant building, when I was running that place. And Mantra was the first person I ever saw. I was judging him for something, and he was the first person I ever saw. This is going to sound so basic and silly. First person I ever saw turning a 4x4 fast, because he was using a 4x4 as his warm-up cube, and he was just hawking that thing around, and I was like, what? What's happening in front of my face right now?
Sadly, I think Mantra's actually quit now, so I'm not sure if he actually knows that he has the NRs retroactively. So it's a bit of a shame, but it's cool to see him. Cool to see him get them.
Yeah, very cool. He's still got a Scube as his profile picture. I'm noticing right now.
Oh, of course. He's the Scube guy.
So he still knows. He still knows.